My sister fired me as soon as she became CEO of our family business. Your services are no longer required, she announced during the board meeting. I helped schedule. Clear your office by tomorrow. I nodded calmly and couldn't stop laughing. Next morning would be fun. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Also, have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? I walked out of the boardroom without a backward glance. The silence in that glass box was heavy, but my mind was light. I didn't go to my office to pack up pictures or plants. I went straight for the safe behind my desk. Inside sat a single black binder. It looked ordinary, just leather and plastic, but it weighed more than the building itself. This wasn't just paperwork, it was the nervous system of Sterling and Stone. It held the access codes, the proprietary algorithms, and the revocable digital keys to every active project we had. For 10 years, I'd been the invisible builder, while Kelsey was busy curating her Instagram feed, picking out Pantone colors for the office remodel, and accepting Young Entrepreneur Awards at galas I wasn't invited to. I was standing in freezing Chicago wind at 4 in the morning. I was the one arguing with contractors about load-bearing steel. I was the one redesigning ventilation systems on the fly to meet impossible deadlines. Kelsey saw architecture as a series of photo opportunities. I saw it as math, gravity, and trust. She believed the Sterling name on the door was the asset. She didn't understand that a brand is just a label on a bottle. The wine inside has to be real. And for a decade, I had been the vintage. I opened my terminal for the last time. My fingers moved over the keyboard with muscle memory. I didn't delete a single file. That would be petty, and I wasn't feeling petty. I was feeling precise. I revoked the administrative access keys to the VR design software I had personally coded. The files remained, ghost images on a screen, locked behind an encryption wall that only one person could breach. I closed the laptop. I picked up the binder. The office around me hummed with the noise of 50 people working on the $85 million Zenith project, phones ringing, printers whirring, the low murmur of ambition. Tomorrow, this sound would change. It would turn into the frantic noise of a machine that had suddenly lost its engine. I walked to the elevator. Haley, my assistant, looked up, her eyes wide. She knew. She was the only one who really knew. I gave her a small nod. Take the day off tomorrow, Haley, I said softly. You won't want to be here. She didn't ask why. She just started packing her bag. I stepped out into the biting wind off Lake Michigan. It was cold, but it felt clean. I wasn't an employee anymore. I wasn't the sister who fixed things. I was the owner of the mind that made this whole thing work, and I was taking my property home. The next morning, my phone started buzzing at 8:05. It didn't stop. By 8:30, I had 12 missed calls from Kelsey and 4 voicemails that escalated from confusion to full-blown hysteria. I was sitting on my balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up, listening to the panic unfold through the tiny speaker of my phone. Kira, the server is down. Fix it, the first message demanded. The second one was sharper. The files are there, but we can't open them. The Zenith presentation is in 2 hours. Stop playing games. The third one was pure rage. This is corporate vandalism. I will sue you into the ground. You think you can sabotage my company because you're jealous? Call me back right now. I took a sip of coffee. Jealousy. That was always Kelsey's default setting. She projected her own insecurities onto everyone else. It was fascinating, really, seeing the Dunning-Kruger effect play out in real time. She stood at the top of the mountain, convinced she had climbed it, never realizing she had been carried. She truly believed the CEO chair held the power. She thought the title on her business card was a magic wand that could command steel and glass to assemble themselves. She didn't understand that in our world, the title is just the frame, the talent is the picture. And when you remove the picture, all you have is an empty square on a wall. I didn't answer. I didn't text back. I let the silence stretch. I imagined her in that boardroom, the investors for the Zenith project waiting, the screens blank, the expensive VR headsets useless. She would be smiling that tight, fake smile, trying to charm her way out of a technical catastrophe. But charm doesn't decrypt code. Charisma doesn't calculate structural integrity. Around 10, the tone of the messages changed. Kira, please, we can talk about a severance package. Just unlock the files. It was bargaining now. But you can't bargain with gravity. You can't negotiate with physics. And you certainly can't negotiate with someone you just discarded, like yesterday's trash. I finally picked up the phone, but not to call her. I called Thomas, our uncle, and the chairman of the board. "Good morning, Thomas," I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with the chaos I knew he was witnessing. "I believe we have a meeting. I'm bringing the blueprints." "Kira," he sounded breathless, stressed. "What is going on?" "Kelsey says you wiped the servers." "Kelsey is mistaken, as usual," I said. "The servers are full, the data is safe, it's just copyrighted." "I'll see you in 20 minutes. I hung up and checked my reflection. I didn't look like a vandal. I didn't look like a disgruntled employee. I looked like an architect who had just realized she owned the building. I walked past the reception desk without stopping. The office was in a state of visible panic. Designers were huddled around screens, whispering. A junior associate was practically crying into a phone. When I reached the executive suite, Kelsey intercepted me. She looked frantic, her perfect hair slightly askew, her eyes wild. "You," she hissed, grabbing my arm. "Unlock it, now, or I call the police." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "I wouldn't do that, Kelsey. The police might ask to see the ownership deeds for the software, and you don't have them." I walked past her into Thomas's office and laid the black binder on his mahogany desk. Thomas looked at it like it was a bomb. Kelsey stormed in behind me, slamming the door. "She's holding us hostage. This is extortion." "It's not extortion," I said, taking a seat. "It's a copyright claim." I opened the binder to the third tab. "Thomas, you remember Grandmother Eleanor's bylaws, don't you? The original incorporation documents from 1982? Thomas frowned, adjusting his glasses. Vaguely. "What about them?" "Grandmother knew this business," I said, my voice steady. "She knew that in a male-dominated industry, or frankly, in any industry obsessed with image, the people who do the actual work often get erased. So she wrote in a clause, a protection mechanism, not a loophole, a shield." I slid the document across the desk. "The grandmother's clause," I read aloud. "While the CEO maintains operational control of the firm, the chief architect retains full, exclusive intellectual property rights to all proprietary designs, code, and schematics until the project receives its final safety certification and certificate of occupancy." The room went silent. Kelsey stared at the paper, her mouth opening and closing. That can't be legal. Dad would have told me." "Dad didn't read the bylaws, Kelsey. He inherited the company. Grandmother built it." I leaned forward. "The Zenith isn't certified yet. It's still in development, which means every line of code, every structural rendering, every VR simulation belongs to me. Personally, not to Sterling and Stone." I pulled out a separate contract from the binder. "So, here is where we stand. You have the name, you have the office, you have the client, but you don't have the building. If you want to use my designs to finish the Zenith, you will need to license them from my new LLC. The fee is $15 million. Or, you can start over from scratch. Good luck explaining that delay to the investors." Thomas looked pale. He was a pragmatist. He knew what a redesign would cost not just in money, but in reputation. "Kira," he said softly, "this is family." "No," I corrected him. "This is business. Yesterday, you let her fire me because I didn't fit the image. Today, I'm showing you the cost of that image." Thomas picked up the binder, his hands trembling slightly as he flipped through the pages. He was looking for a way out, a clause to override me, a loophole to exploit. Kelsey was pacing behind him, muttering about lawsuits and betrayal. But then, Thomas stopped. He froze on a page near the back. His face, already pale, turned a sickly shade of gray. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. He wasn't looking at the IP deed anymore. He was looking at a printout of a digital log I had flagged with a red sticky note. "That," I said, "is the reason I didn't just walk away." I stood up and walked over to the desk, pointing at the highlighted rows. 3 weeks ago, I flagged a safety concern regarding the steel grade for the Zenith's support trusses. The specs required grade 60 steel. "It's expensive, but it's necessary for the wind load at that height." Kelsey stopped pacing. She went very still. I refused to sign off on the cheaper grade 40 steel, I continued, looking directly at my sister. Because I don't build tombs. I build towers. But then, I checked the procurement logs yesterday before I left. I turned the page for Thomas. There it was. A purchase order for the cheaper, substandard steel. Approved. Signed. That is your digital signature, Kira, Thomas said, looking up at me, confusion warring with horror. No, I said. That is a copy of my digital signature, pasted onto a document I never saw. The timestamp shows it was approved at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was on a flight to New York. I couldn't have signed it. I turned to Kelsey. She looked like a cornered animal. You forged my signature, Kelsey. You authorized substandard materials to shave $2 million off the budget, so you could redirect it to the rebranding campaign. That isn't just a business dispute. That is criminal fraud. And if that building goes up with that steel, it's negligent homicide waiting to happen. The silence in the room was absolute. This wasn't about contracts anymore. It wasn't about who got the corner office. It was about the fact that my sister was willing to risk thousands of lives to make the balance sheet look prettier for her first quarter as CEO. I did it for the company, Kelsey suddenly shouted, her voice shrill. We were over budget. I fixed it. I was protecting the family legacy. You risked destroying the legacy, I said coldly. Grandmother Eleanor built this firm on integrity. You just sold it for a marketing budget. Kelsey's shout echoed in the sudden quiet of the office. I fixed it, she repeated, as if volume could make the lie true. She looked from Thomas to me, her eyes wide and wet, panic finally shattering her composure. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the terrifying realization of a child who has broken something they cannot repair. Fix it? Thomas slammed the binder shut. You forged a safety certification. Do you have any idea what this means? If the city inspectors found this, if the press found this. It's fine, Kelsey insisted, but her voice wavered. It's just steel. It's all just numbers. Nobody would know if she hadn't gone digging. She pointed a shaking finger at me. She's the one ruining us. She's the one checking logs and digging up dirt. Why can't you just be on my side for once? I watched her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt a deep, clinical pity. This was narcissistic injury, in its purest form. She wasn't sorry she endangered lives. She wasn't sorry she committed fraud. She was furious that she had been caught. The shame was burning her up, and because she couldn't process shame, she was converting it into rage. I am on your side, Kelsey, I said quietly. I'm the only reason you're not in handcuffs right now. If I hadn't found this, that building would have gone up, and when the first high wind hit, it would have come down. And you would have been responsible for every life lost. You're jealous, she screamed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. You've always been jealous because Dad loved me more, because I'm the face of this family. You're just a nerd with a calculator. You're nothing. She was unraveling. The perfectly curated image of the girl-boss CEO was melting away, revealing the terrified, incompetent bully beneath. She grabbed the binder from the desk and threw it across the room. Papers scattered everywhere. It was a tantrum. A violent, pathetic tantrum. Thomas stood up. He looked tired. He looked old. That's enough, Kelsey. No! Fire her! Make her sign the waiver! Make her fix it! She grabbed Thomas's lapels, shaking him. Do something. I am doing something, Thomas said, peeling her hands off him. He looked at me. Kira, you have full authority to halt the construction. We will strip the bad steel. We will redo the safety checks. He turned back to his niece. And Kelsey, you are removed as CEO, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Kelsey froze. She looked at me, waiting for me to intervene, to save her like I always did, to fix her mess in the middle of the night so she could shine in the morning. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched her realize that this time, there was no safety net. The invisible builder wasn't building anymore. 6 months later, the Chicago skyline looked different to me, not because the buildings had changed, but because I was looking at them from a different window. I hadn't gone back to Sterling and Stone. Thomas had offered me the CEO role, begged me, actually, but I turned it down. You can't rebuild a house on a poisoned foundation. Instead, I opened a small studio in a converted loft in the West Loop. It was just me, Haley, and 3 of the best engineers from the old firm who had walked out the day I left. We didn't have a glass boardroom. We didn't have a marketing budget. We had drafting tables, good coffee, and a waiting list of clients who wanted buildings that wouldn't fall down. The Zenith project was stalled, mired in safety audits and legal reviews. The Sterling & Stone brand was toxic news, whispered about at industry parties as a cautionary tale. Kelsey was facing charges, tied up in a legal battle that would likely last years. She had lost the one thing she valued most, her audience. I stood by the window, looking out at the city. It was snowing again, that biting Chicago winter, but inside, it was warm. I thought about grandmother Eleanor. I thought about the clause she wrote 40 years ago, a message in a bottle for a granddaughter she knew would need it. My victory wasn't that I destroyed my sister. I didn't destroy her. She did that herself, when she decided image mattered more than integrity. My victory was that I refused to let her destroy my work. I didn't burn the garden down. I just took my seeds and planted them somewhere else, in soil that wasn't toxic. I turned back to my desk. There was a new set of blueprints waiting. A library. Sustainable, light-filled, built to last 100 years. No shortcuts, no lies. Just math, gravity, and trust. That was the only legacy worth building. If you've ever had to walk away from something you built to save your own soul, share this story. And tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you will never let anyone take credit for?